Hello again and welcome to the Be Life Podcast, coming to you from Canton Nazarene Church in Canton, Ohio. And I'm Joe, Josh as usual, and Zach is our producer. First of all, it's a nice looking haircut you got.
Thanks, man.
I just
it's
had
fresh.
to tell you, I want people to recognize that because you walked in and it was like, yeah.
Nice. Shout out to my hairstylist, Courtney.
That's nice. She did well. And you got a tan?
Yeah. I've been out in the pool.
Yeah.
I am my true summer self.
You are.
I was thinking about getting a little shell necklace to wear. Then
Ooh, pukas.
Then I'd be super summer.
Pukas. Do you remember pukas?
There was like a revival of them when I was a kid. Yeah.
Pukas with tie-dye shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And platform heels. Like 4-inch platforms.
That's a vibe.
I used to wear those. I did. Till I fell off. It's a long way to go. I want to tell you, I told you at the beginning of the week, I said, let's just wing it this week. Let's go into this. But then I really felt like, and it was hard to explain this because I said, let's talk about freedom. And you were like, well, that's not winging it. And I was like, then I felt like I had to defend myself. And I was just, I felt like the Lord was telling me, now this, that sounds, some people think that's weird, but I just felt like I was being led to talk about freedom and the difference between freedom in the world sense, especially the Western world, and freedom the way Jesus talks about freedom and the way God designed our freedom to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I felt like doing it. So I appreciate you being flexible like you are.
I mean, the plan was to be flexible, period. No matter what we talked about,
So
I was going to roll with it.
now.
So, yeah.
So I guess the question I wanted to ask today is, to people who are watching this and maybe don't know Christ, or people who do but don't understand freedom that well, why can't I be free to be as I see fit? Why can't I be free to be how I want to be as long as I don't harm anyone? As long as my freedom doesn't encroach in yours, why can't I be whoever I want and do whatever I want? Is that a fair question?
That's like the fundamental principle of libertarianism, that I have the right to do whatever I want to do so long as it's not encroaching on your freedoms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in the United States, at least, we're celebrating Independence Day this weekend. Our independence from Great Britain, which is still celebrated hugely with fireworks and everything. I'm not sure people even understand the gist of it anymore and what it's all about. They just know that it's...
I thought it was a hot dog celebrating. Yeah, hot dog celebration day.
And fireworks, and pool and the whole thing. But Independence Day is this weekend. So the one word that Americans cherish more than any other word in our culture, I think, is freedom.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate buzzword.
Yeah.
If you want someone to be on your side of an argument or get on board with your idea, you say, yeah, we're on the side of freedom.
Yes.
And any American will be like, yeah.
Yeah. I know. And then here's the other part. I thought of this. The Star Spangled Banner. Our Star Spangled Banner, by the way, people have heard it. And the big line is, "O'er the land of the free," and just keeps going. And that's always the highest note. And as soon as you hear free, everybody starts cheering. The planes fly over, and you don't even hear the last verse.
Yeah, that's true.
And the home of the brave. Because the home of the brave means you have to sacrifice something. They stop right at the land of the free. And so I was looking at all that and thinking of that. And I was thinking of how important freedom is to a certain extent. for, when you have more freedom, you have increased political and economic freedom is good for marginalized people. It's freedom of religion's good, or freedom not to worship is good. Those are all part of the good things, but it is it's kind of a paradox, because my freedom will ultimately collide with your freedom.
Always.
And my freedom will also collide with other freedoms that I want. So it doesn't make sense. Nobody has real, complete freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. There's consequences to any action or choice or inaction. There's always consequences that affect other parts of your life, that affect the lives of people around you, that affect your environment. Yeah.
But where did we come up with this thing in the West, for one? I think more so in the Western culture. And I think I go back to, I think it all started. Let me try and say this. We were once, back in the old days,
Back in the olden days.
I'm not talking about the 20s and 30s. I'm talking about early cultures.
Yeah.
Were theistic. Even the Greeks and everybody, they were theistic. Now, they weren't one God, but there were gods. Everything, all humanity was centered around that there was an outside force. There was a God, whether it be multiple gods, whether it be one. And so they based their freedom on something above them. So they were kind of barricaded a little bit.
Yeah.
But right around the 17th century is when Rousseau and Sartre and Chomsky and Marx, and they just kept falling in line, there was meaning to life when we were theistic. Bear with me. There was meaning to life when we were theistic. And the meaning was outside of themselves. When these philosophers, Western philosophers, Rousseau especially, started this whole trend of meaninglessness, they basically said, there is no God, there is no meaning to life. Life is what you make it. And they stripped everything from outside of us and said, you are now the one who will control your destiny and your freedom. And you can make it, you're your own little God, and you can make it what you want. And so it was replaced by an individual meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm tracking.
All right. So,
I mean, if you're talking like the span of thousands of years of human existence,
well,
and
maybe not thousands,
and you're trying to like cut it down for the sake of this argument, then yes, I'm tracking.
So today we are free because there is no cosmic order, no essential human nature, no truths, no moral absolutes to kneel to. And because of that, in Western society especially, now I think in Eastern societies and South America, Africa, Asia, where Christianity is booming, I think because they have a head start because they're still somewhat theist. But the West has gone more towards this postmodernist philosophy where there is no cosmic order. There is no absolute truth. It's whatever I make it. My truth is different than yours. And so we're at a point where we've lost, where we think, and here's my point. Let me come back around. We think we have, in that case, absolute freedom. And in reality, we have no freedom because we fall into every pit. We have drug problems. We think, oh, I can do drugs. I can do this. I can say this. I can be this. And we stop following the owner's manual for our lives. And that leads to the problems that we have in Western society. And it gets to the point where laws, even the strictest laws, can't stop people from harming themselves and others. And I think that's where we're at today. Boom.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think I'm following the way you're laying it out. Well, you point out these Enlightenment philosophers who reimagine the relationship between an individual and their culture and the universe in general, and perhaps a deity. Those Enlightenment thinkers were the primary inspiration for our nation. Like, America was founded on the principles of the British Commonwealth and Enlightenment philosophy. And so I think that having individual rights, having freedom, having independence, right? The Declaration of Independence we look at as being the birth certificate of our country. It's a document not about unity and a better tomorrow. It's about being free from the limitations of the higher powers, about being free from the man. And, the Constitution, the First Amendment to the Constitution is the Bill of Rights. We're going to have all these individual rights, individual liberties, that no one's gonna mess with my individual rights. Yeah, these are fundamental principles of being American. And I think they are directly inspired by these Enlightenment philosophers.
Well, but there's different Enlightenment philosophers now. There were philosophers like Augustine. There were different people in our history that were philosophers, but were God-centered.
Yeah.
There were others like Marx, Chomsky, Rousseau, people like that, who were really evil people, Rousseau had, just for instance, Rousseau had multiple children out of wedlock. He had multiple mistresses. And he would have these children, and he wouldn't allow the mistresses to keep the children. He would take the children when they were born and leave them on the courthouse steps or on a church or different places. He then came up with the philosophy to suit his own, to handle his own guilt. He was the one who came up with the philosophy of government cradle to grave, of public schools, of this, of that. He said it's better for the government to take care of children than it is for parents. So he did that because he just didn't want to deal with his own responsibility, where he took multiple children and just said, this is a bad end to a relationship. And I'm just going to leave it on the doorstep somewhere. I'm not even going to care about it. So you have people like that. I would not say that America was based on Rousseau's philosophy. No. I would say it was more based on a freedom, but a freedom with at least somewhat. Now, you could argue that some of them weren't, but at least somewhat of a godly influence.
America is the founding principles of America, as reflected by like a Continental Congress and the founding fathers, is a unique cocktail of Enlightenment philosophies. They're pulling from different inspirations, some being atheistic, some being, most of the founding fathers claim to be deist. That is a religious stance that is very foreign to our world today. So the way they were viewing God and the way they're viewing the world is very, very alien to us now. And so I think that America does end up being something unique in how our values are structured. But I would I would attribute it still in large part to to those philosophers who have a new way of thinking. Primarily what would that be, the second Enlightenment era? What do you call that? What's the term? I don't have my computer in front of me.
I don't know it. I don't know what you're.
Well, you have these different eras,
Yes,
of the development of philosophy, and it's the Second Great Awakening. That's the term. It came to me. I don't know how much.
I don't know why they call it that. It's like, what really? What did you awaken from?
Well, I mean, you literally have the way that society's structured being changed by these awakenings, these enlightenments, these new ideas.
Western society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
because I don't think they changed. Again, I don't think it had any effect on Africa, Asia, at all. I don't think. Well, I do to a certain extent that communism ended up becoming part of China. And that was Mao, and that was all part of that whole philosophy. So I agree with that. But the individuals within China, within Asia, I don't believe ever lost their heart and soul, so to speak. They may have had to give up their different governmental forms and everything, but I don't think it changed them. I honestly believe that our philosophy in the West changed people. And that's a difference.
I mean, America was meant to be, in the eyes of the founding fathers, it was meant to be a blank slate, right? They had no intention of ingratiating native cultures, right? For all intents and purposes, we just wiped out the native population that was in America.
Yes.
They were driven into lands that could not provide for them. They were straight up killed by disease. They were driven to war. Yeah. So we had no intentions of melding together the European cultures and the native cultures. So the founding fathers viewed it as a blank slate. I think that has resulted in pros and cons. I think that is why America boomed, why it became a great empire so quickly, and really just ruled the global market and had so much impact on the world. But you're right. I think that there have been some downsides that we've seen later on as that libertarian mindset has had an opportunity to be teased out across generations.
Well, I think in my mind, and where I'm going with this is the fact that as we start to develop these freedoms and get this idea of freedom, and freedom becomes the primary goal of everyone. And as you start squeezing, if freedom becomes so great of a goal, then God has to be squeezed out also.
Yeah.
Because God is putting guardrails on you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so that quenches my freedom. And so I have to eventually squeeze him out too if I want to be my own little God.
Yeah, if you want to pursue true libertarian American principles of freedom, you are not going to give up freely your wealth, your power to the state. You are not going to give it up to your community. You are not going to give it up to a God. It is for you. You earned it. You came across it. It's yours to do with what you want.
And Christianity is the arch enemy of that.
If it's practiced according to the way Jesus laid out, I would say yes.
Yeah. And so what we're looking at here is people actually have gotten to the point, I think, where they think they have absolute freedom, where they are under the illusion that they can do whatever they want.
I think people are so equipped that it leads to that mentality. We're so privileged in what we have. So many of us are property owners. And even though this upcoming generation of adults is struggling to become property owners, they're frustrated because they believe they have the right to it. I think that everyone having their own, Black Mirror in their pocket, that they can access the internet, they assume that that is their right, and they have the right and privilege to do what they want on the internet, to say what they want on their social platforms, to view the content that they want. I think that people are so equipped, that people are so privileged, that they think that it's all about themselves.
So when you look at this, and I'm coming from an older perspective again, where I have seen the deterioration of society. To me, it looks like this, Josh. It looks like whereas once we were neighbors in my neighborhood where I grew up, and everywhere around that neighborhood, I mean, it all was the same. You didn't lock your doors. If somebody was in need, you helped. If there was a disaster in a city, people would come in to help. You didn't need homeowners associations to tell people what to do, to figure out what color to paint your door in your house, or to where the garbage can's supposed to go every Thursday. People just did things because they cared about each other. Their rights and their freedom wasn't as important. They understood freedom, but they also understood and had a love and compassion for the next person. And so they wouldn't allow that freedom to collide with their neighbor. That's how we were. Now you have every neighborhood, or many neighborhoods, most have HOAs, where there's a group of people that tell you everything you have to do. And if you park your car too long on the outside, you get fined. And if everybody cuts their grass the same way, the mulch gets the same way. And it keeps disputes down, supposedly. That worked for a while. It's getting to a point now where HOAs don't even work anymore. I think the other thing is, you see a disaster in an inner city now, a city, Cleveland, let's say anywhere. Say something happens in Cleveland, there's a riot or something like that, and some things get destroyed, or there's a major collapse of something. People aren't going in to help, they're going in to steal now. They see an opportunity, an open store. It's no longer, I need to help that store. I need to go in and take everything I can out of that store. So I think we've gotten to the point where I see society, and I'm not, trust me, I am not negative about this. I'm just factual. Because first of all, I believe in the power of God. I believe that God works all things for good. I believe he's God. But I believe society is collapsing, especially in the West.
I thought we said we were going to talk about this on another episode.
This is all part of freedom. This is all part of freedom. And I have to tell you this. I'm coming from a perspective. Christianity was the arch enemy of my life.
Yeah.
At one point, I saw a relationship with Jesus in a way that constricted my success. I wanted success. I wanted popularity. I wanted power. I wanted all these things. I wanted Christ to handle, and I've said this before, I wanted Christ to handle my eternity. But I didn't want him to take away my freedom. Freedom! That's all I think of. He can't take away our freedom. But so I went, because of the tug of filling this spiritual void that we have.
Yeah.
I would have rather, and I went through transcendental meditation. I went through Est. I went through Eastern mysticism. I went through all of these things to try. That was my way of finding God without giving up self. And I think that led me to thinking I had freedom, but you become in bondage to those things, and you become bondage to the chase. And the question is, do you believe, I know you do you believe that you have to choose between freedom and Jesus? I think you do.
I think that there's many people who don't desperately don't want to, that they want Jesus to be a part of their life, even to be prevalent in their life, but not to be preeminent in their lives. That they want to have the benefits of feeling good because I'm spiritually healthy, because I went to church, or I said a prayer, or I, participated in Lent. I think people want to feel good about those things. I perhaps people want to feel secure about, what happens after they die, and they go into the mystery of death, and well, I feel secure because I'm a Christian. But I think people don't want their lives to be uncomfortably shaped by their faith if it involves sacrifice of their personal preferences or their career goals, or even sometimes how they spend their weekends. If it demands sacrifice of their time, that's too much. So many people want to commoditize religion, and I don't think that that's a healthy way to approach Christianity.
And I don't think it doesn't give you, and have you ever seen, we've had Bill Shearer on this show from Whispering Grace.
Mm.
And I've spoken to him about multiple things about horses and everything. And horses that are broken live an average of 10 years longer than a wild horse. And horses that are free never reach their full potential. It's when they are broken and when they give themselves to the trainer, another person, that they discover all of the things that they can do that they never knew they could do.
Yeah.
They don't lose their freedom. The freedom is greater, and they realize who they are, and they live longer. And they experience love that they did not experience before. And this is all fact, and this is nature. This is nature. This is how God intended it. And it's the same with us. It's like, I can tell you, because of my drastic change, that minus God, I wasn't free at all. And I'm telling people this, and I'm thinking, they're looking at me going, oh, you're an idiot. I don't care. The bottom line is I wasn't free because I was fearful. I was always chasing. I didn't have answers. I had no meaning. Meaning was wrapped up in what I was doing today, whether I proved myself again today. And when I gave my life to Christ is when, like the horse who was broken, is when I started living. And so freedom, without Jesus, we are a leaf in a hurricane, and we have no meaning. Western society. And that's why I say the only way to really change a society is to change the hearts of the people. And so I wanted to, there was people think they're absolutely free. And I read a story, and I want to read this to you. It was out of a book by Tim Keller. And it said this: let's consider how freedom really works. Imagine a man in his 60s who likes to eat whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He also loves spending time playing with his grandchildren. Both of these activities bring meaning to his life and are important. Then at his annual physical, his doctor says to him, unless you severely restrict what you eat from now on, your heart problems will worsen and you will have a heart attack. You must completely stop eating all your favorite foods. Now, is this man free?
I mean, I think it's such a simple example that I think lays it out really clearly.
Yeah.
That even when it's my choice, what I'm going to prioritize, what disciplines I'm going to set up in my life, I'm going to have to give up something in my life for something else because I can't do it all. I can't have it all. I can't experience the joys of gluttony and the joys of health.
Yes. And so it's like, does that definition of being able to do our world and the Western world is a definition of freedom is the ability to do whatever we want to control our own destiny. That definition doesn't work in reality because it comes in conflict with other desires we have, other needs we have. Plus, it comes in conflict with everybody else.
It sounds really nice in a philosophical vacuum, though.
Yes.
Like as a fundamental idea to be able to do whatever I want, to make my life however I want, to enjoy whatever pleasures I want. I mean, that sounds great until you tease it out just a little bit and you realize that there's a cost to every decision that I make.
Yes. And is it really beneficial? And that's where, you know, I look at HOAs, I look at all this stuff. I look at wars.
Can I ask you something? Did you
I
have
hate
a run-in with
HOAs.
your HOA that inspired this?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've had multiple because I'm not good. First of all, I have to tell you, I'm not real good at people telling me what to do. So there's that freedom thing in me that wants to say, you know, I'm painting my house, whatever color I choose, whatever works for me. I want that freedom. And I'm telling you that. And I also believe that if something happens in my neighborhood, I will be there for my neighbor. I'll rally to my neighbor. I don't need an HOA to tell me how to rally to my neighbor because I'm just going to do it. And so there's a part of me that's just, hey, look, let's just care for each other. But it doesn't work anymore. But HOAs don't work anymore.
No.
They used to work, but they don't work now because people are just, you have to have stricter rules all the time in order to keep enforcing the new freedoms that people have every day.
My personality type is always trying to push the envelope. It's always trying to test. Well, okay, you had a rule that clarifies this, but you didn't clarify this in particular. So now I'm going to see if I can get away with it.
Yeah, I think that's human nature. And if it's not restricted by the love of God, if it's not tempered by this loving being outside of our own that gives us a love that is different, that surpasses and changes our hearts, then we'll always be like that.
I think I'm so drawn to the theory of atonement known as Christus Victor that describes Jesus as defeating death, and that it is he becomes the king in my life because he has conquered sin and death. And I feel like that's so that resonates with my relationship with God and my personal experience so heavily, because I found that setting up guardrails to say, hey, don't cross this line isn't helpful to me, because then I say, all right, as long as I hang out just on the other side of this line, I'm fine, rather than being given a vision of here's our goal, here's what we are aspiring to, here is what it looks like to live as a member of the kingdom of God. Here is a way that you can love your neighbor better. and being inspired to try and move as close to that as possible, right? If you give me a line, I'm going to get to that line and be done. If you give me a goal that is perhaps, and at least in this lifetime, unreachable, but there's always room for me to go further, then that's going to motivate me in a much better way. So I always want to pursue being Christ-like more than avoid being worldly.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. I was reading. I read a. I have a quote by. There's a social psychologist, Jonathan Haidt, and I was reading some things on him as
How
I
you spell
was
that last name?
Haidt,
Oh, okay.
not Hate. Jonathan does hate. No, he doesn't. And he wrote, an ideology of extreme personal freedom can be dangerous because it encourages people to leave home. Now, this may be, you may not agree with this, but I think ultimately this extreme personal freedom can be dangerous because it encourages people to leave homes, jobs, cities, marriages, and relationships in search of personal and professional fulfillment, thereby breaking the bonds that gave them the best hope for such fulfillment.
No, I think I agree with that. I think that sounds right. I think that I feel like everyone has to go through this phase in life at some point of being rebellious, and especially as I like have conversations with teenagers and young adults as they're going through the years that it's most typical. Like when I talk with a teenager and I say, yeah, as an adult, I can go to the store and buy ice cream anytime I want and just enjoy it. I can stay up all night until I like beat this chapter in the video game. I don't do it because there's a cost and it's terrible. And I have given myself a bedtime and I wake up at the same time in the morning, and not because someone's making me do it, but because having those constraints on my life helps me to do better. And everyone has to go through that phase in their life at some point. What's sad is seeing people who just hang out there for so long, or people who hit their midlife crisis and like, man, why have I been following all this structure? I'm just going to be free and I'm going to make all these choices that might be harmful to me, but that's my prerogative if it harms me. And then you see a lot of them like immediately renege and be like, okay, no, I want to go back to the structure that I had, because it's dangerous out there to give up those relationships, to give up those habits and structures that I had in my life. Those things are good. They've always been good. That's why our parents and our teachers and our governors and people like made us participate in those structures, not because sure, in part, sometimes having the structures can make it easier for the parents on the kids, but it's also for the kids' benefit. It's primarily for the kids' benefit. And even as an adult, like, you have to recognize that it's for your benefit. It's for your good. And it doesn't make you less than, it doesn't make you weak to submit to those systems, but in fact, you can become a better person through that discipline. And it is this hurdle that I see so many people, sadly, a lot of times they struggle to like accept that, but when they do, they thrive in life. Yeah. And so it can be like, in the pursuit of freedom, we can pursue dangerous things. And it's weird because like, philosophically, I really do tend to empathize with this perspective of like true libertarianism. Like, I'll see someone who got arrested for possession of drugs. I'm like, hey, you know what? It's their choice if they want to, participate in recreational drug use. But if they know the consequences of it, people don't get in trouble for drinking 24 packs of Coke every week, but most people die from heart disease, and that's coming from the amount of sugar that they're taking in. So we let them participate in that vice freely. So like, on a principled level, I'm just fine with it. But like, if I ever had a friend that was like doing drugs, I'd be like, stop that right now. That's not good for you. Like, of course you have the right to do it, but it's dumb. So stop doing it.
Right.
And so I feel like I always have that tension there of like, yeah, it's your right. It's your freedom to be able to do that. It's a terrible choice. Don't do it.
Do you think in our society, especially in the United States today, that people are becoming more entitled, more wanting freedom, fighting against authority, or less?
Oh, definitely more. I think that that's driven by, in large part, consumerism. That I see so many influencers that are traveling the world, and then I'm like, oh, I should travel the world. And then I see these influencers that have a big house and nice things. I'm like, I should have a big house and I should have nice things. And I see ads pop up all the time for everything, every experience, every product that I could imagine. And I'm like, yeah, it's a click of a button away. And so I think that's in large part what drives that sense of entitlement.
We're not far from Total Recall. We're not far from Total Recall.
Yeah.
Do you realize that?
Whenever I watch movies that are set in this like post-apocalyptic world, I'm like, yeah, man, we are like a stone's throw away from that every time. It freaks me out a little bit.
Well, I mean, look at. I think of the movie 1984 when that came out. The book 1984 when that came out. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is." It's not that far from reality. Going into a place where you can have a dream implanted in your brain, and you could be anybody you want to be for an hour and a half. Is not that far from reality.
I mean, we literally have, people, when VR headsets came out, like there were people who like weren't going outside because they were living their life in VR. There's people that like their avatar is their truer self than their flesh and blood self. It's pretty freaky.
Yeah. So I look at this and I'm going, and it bothers me because I long for, it's so bad because I know I'm now this old guy who says, well, when I was young, we used to walk barefoot 3 miles to school. And, I don't want to go there. I don't want to be that guy, but I am being that guy. I long for the neighborhoods that we had. I long for and I unfortunately will never get them. The closest thing I will get to that is my church.
Yeah. I think that that's a countercultural thing, a need that the church is meeting that most of society is not. Like, quite genuinely, I would never go to my neighbor and ask to borrow anything because that's their thing and I can go buy it myself. I don't need to borrow it from them. And like, I don't have any beef with my neighbors. They're super nice on both my left and my right, and they're just like, they're both older folks, and they just go out in the garden, and I don't have any problem with them.
That's because they're older folks.
But I would never like go ask them for a favor. Like, that feels so intrusive. Like, I wouldn't ask that of them.
See, we do. The one on the right, the one on the left of me.
Yeah,
we do that.
Oh, see,
we do that.
That makes my skin crawl to think about doing it.
Why?
I don't know. Because I live my life like, I don't know. I'm doing it for myself. I got my things until I'm in church, and then when I'm in church, like if I don't know, people in church help each other move, watch each other's kids, give each other car rides. We lend advice, we lend tools, we go over and help each other. Yeah, it's so different.
Why?
I don't know why.
I know why.
It just feels wrong outside of the church.
But see, that may be what we need to do, because those older people probably long to get to know you. If they're older, they've experienced what I experienced, which was neighborhoods where people did that.
Yeah.
Where they lived together, where you went in, where you disciplined your neighbor's kids, and you did that stuff. But they won't come to you because you're the younger guy. And they don't want to intrude on you. But I bet they would welcome you into their world.
Oh, probably. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, it makes sense in my head. I think you're right. They probably would. I don't know, like, I don't know what it would take for me to go do that.
Just say hello. Maybe what it's going to take is you go steal an Amazon order off their porch and tell them it was delivered to your place by accident. And you ring the bell and you give it to them and say, hey, this was put on mine and I think it's yours.
And then we'll have the perfect meet cute.
But then they'll have Ring and they saw you stealing it and then it's all over. So that won't work. So forget that. But I'm looking, again, Jesus was talking about my yoke and my yoke being easy and my burden is light, talking about his freedom. And I go back to this too, Josh, and this pertains to everything. It pertains to even you and your neighbors, is that the Bible, I've said this before, but the Bible is our owner's manual. It's like we have this body, we have this spirit, and God gave us his word to say, here's who I am, here's my story, here's a story of your salvation. And within this book is everything you will need to lead, not to lead a perfect life and not to lead a life that's mechanical, but I'm going to change your heart and then I expect you to follow me this way. And so the freedom comes in doing what the Creator, our owner, says that will work for our lives to make our lives longer, to make our lives healthier, to make our lives more joyous. And why is it real simple to me? I mean, it's not simple to live it. I'm not saying, I've got it. I've got all the answers.
Is it simple in theory? It's difficult in practice because it involves humbling yourself, and that's not something that we are challenged to do in our culture very often. To set aside my personal preference, my personal perspective on things, to humble myself and to submit to authority. Those are not things that we are encouraged to do very often, but I think that's how you approach the Bible, and I think that's how you approach Jesus.
So my question is, yes, it's not something that's easy, but is it something you want? I mean, and I'm asking you to really consider that because I'm asking myself that too. Is it something that you desperately want more than any other freedom, any other thing in your life? Do you want to die to Christ?
I think it gives me purpose and it gives me meaning.
But do you want to?
And I want that. That's the thing is, if I'm honest, I don't want sacrifice. I don't want to give up my time. I don't want to give up my money. I don't want to give up my habits, my preferences, but I want the confidence in my purpose in life. I want the confidence in life beyond death. I want the peace that passes understanding. And it is obviously it's the trade-off. I trade off my personal freedoms in order to have that.
And when you say it that way, it doesn't sound quite as good. Because you said, I'm trading off and I'm not trying to analyze you because I'm thinking the same thing. That when you say I trade off my personal freedoms for that, it's almost like you're saying I'm giving up freedom for that. Whereas what I'm trying to get to is that is true freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm giving up my artificial freedom.
Yeah.
I'm giving up my self-created freedom, which actually is very limiting, to have the freedom that Christ gives me, that God gives me, that is far greater of freedom, that now I'm opening myself up to my full potential in the Creator, versus this little freedom that I thought was great freedom, but is just in this world and just now. So it's a little bit different than what you said.
Yes. Yeah. The thing that I don't want to gloss over, however, is the sacrifice, right? When Jesus says to take up your cross and follow him, that doesn't mean to put on a necklace with a little cross pendant. Like, to take up your cross in that context is to carry a heavy weight, knowing that you are walking towards your death. And
do you think it's heavy?
And it's the death of self. I think if you are genuinely giving up yourself and your desires, that is heavy. It goes against my natural self.
Yes.
That's heavy. I think it's worth it. I think in every area of my life that I surrender to God, it ends up being worth it, right? And so that's why it becomes easier as I grow in my relationship with God. It becomes easier to say, all right, I'm going to turn this over to God, because last time it worked, and the time before that it worked, and the time before that it worked. So, God's got a pretty good track record. I should have faith in him. It becomes easier as I go, but yeah, I think, it's described as death to self. Like, taking off the old man. Like, I don't imagine that as like just taking off a robe. I imagine that as like, I don't know, Bobby's language, like circumcising of the heart, to like cut it away, like to cut away who I am. It hurts. It's a sacrifice. It's heavy, and it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And people want to circumvent that sacrifice all the time. People who come to Christianity that don't dislike themselves, people that have been pretty satisfied with their life, but something's missing. I think for those people, it's really hard. If I've done my best to be a good person, why should I have to give up who I am? I think I'm a pretty good person. I think I worked pretty hard to make a good life.
It's mine.
Yeah.
I did this. I had it before you came along.
And I think for those people, it's someone who goes through a lot of things and has already wrestled with these things, has already, I don't know, people who've experienced self-loathing. It might be easier for them than it is for someone who's lived a good life and says, do I really, is there something better? Do I need something more? What's wrong with what I have? I think for those people, it's really hard to make that sacrifice. But I think that's why the change sometimes in those people comes a lot later.
Yeah.
Because it takes wrestling with in order to surrender that.
Me.
And
I resemble that very much.
And in our Wesleyan faith, we talk about like salvation and sanctification. We say you can choose to follow God and still be like holding on to that part of who you are. And that's fine. And we're going to accept you into the fold, and we're going to worship alongside you, and we're going to disciple alongside you. And at some point, we know that the Holy Spirit's going to convict your heart, and you are going to give up that part, that thing that you worked to build in your life. You're going to give it up because God has something better. And we have confidence that God's Spirit is working in you, and that change will come. And it might come at the same time as salvation. It might come years later. But we have confidence that God is working in you, working out perfection in you.
Yeah. And he promised, Matthew chapter 11, he says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. That's everyone.
Yeah.
That's everyone who thinks they have freedom. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And that's, that's Christ talking. He didn't come and beat us. God didn't beat us over the head. God didn't come in with forcing us to do something. He invites us into his world, into this. And he says, yeah, you've got to come in. And when you come, you got to pick up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me. But he also says that it's easier. It's easier than what you're doing now. And my way is easy, and my way will give you joy. And Josh, I came into this today so wanting people to understand that they're not giving anything up in following Jesus, that ultimately they're gaining a whole nother perspective on who they are. It's like the horse who suddenly understands that he can do things that he never thought he could do before.
What you are giving up pales in comparison to what you gain. For a horse to be shoed, to be constrained to
have a saddle,
to have a saddle, to be constrained to a field, like those are constraints, and they're absolutely worth it because of gaining years of life and greater strength and connection with people and those things. There is sacrifice. It pales in comparison to the payoff, and that's the paradox that has to be gotten across, is that yes, there's sacrifice. On the other side of it, you'll be like, wait, you'll almost forget what it was like before, because it's whatever freedom you had before was a counterfeit of what you have now.
Amen. It's so true. I know that. And I still struggle with it, but I know it because of so many years of thinking I was free. You know, I thought about one other thing with the horses. I know we've got to go, but there are two types of trainers for horses. There is Bill Scheer, who loves a horse, takes the time with the horse, pets the horse, loves the horse, and slowly gets that horse to acclimate to him and love him and trust him. Bill says a horse wants to know three things. Do you love me? Can I trust you? And can you help me? And he said every horse wants to know those three things. And I thought of when I was in a foreign land and we couldn't speak the language. And I've said this before, but there's a universal language that people, can I trust you? And do you love me? And that supersedes that. That is a stronger communication than any language. You could train a horse by force and just riding that horse and staying on while it bucks you and throws you. And finally the horse gives up and is exhausted and you win. That's a whole different thing than what Bill Scheer does and what other people do when they love a horse into training that horse.
Yeah.
Because they love him. That's the difference between the world and God. God doesn't want to force us. He says he invites us. And I would invite, ultimately, if you don't know the love of Jesus Christ, you don't know the love of God, he invites you to learn about him. He invites you to read about him, and he invites you to deny yourself, pick up your cross and follow him, and have a life that is far more abundant, far more joyful than a life without him. And that really is where we're going with this freedom. We have freedom. It's not really freedom. Freedom in Jesus is the freedom that is easy, that the burden is light, and brings joy. So this 4th of July, let's celebrate the real freedom.
I feel like we need like a sound effect of an eagle soaring over.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would be great.
Hey, if you enjoyed watching this or listening to this podcast, it would mean a whole lot to us if you gave the video on YouTube a like. You can subscribe to us, ring the bell for notifications, leave a comment if you have anything to say, if you have any questions, if you want to challenge the things we said, we always invite that. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, again, we want to say thank you for being there. Give us a rating and a review, follow us. Always feel free to share this content with anyone that you think it might speak to them or spark a conversation, whether it's because you agree with what we say or disagree with us. Hey, we just want to get those conversations rolling. We want to talk about the things that matter. Once again, just thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next week.